Hi and welcome everyone to the February 2025 episode of UI5ers Live. This episode is about two very different topics. One is the manifest.json file and all kinds of pitfalls and best practices around that one. And the other part is about accessibility. So for this, we are joined by special guests here. For the manifest.json part, there's Marco Beier from the UI5 community.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And Peter Muessig, whom you already know from all the past UI5 lives.
Hi, everyone.
And later on, Nikolai Kolarov will talk about accessibility, about the newest features, and WCAG and ARIA 1.2, and what it means for our development, and about our screen reader testing environment. So stay until the very end. Hi, Nikolai.
Hi, everyone.
And I, Andreas Kunz, will be your moderator today. All right, let's not waste any time. Let's get started with Marco. So what do you have to say about the manifest.json file?
Thanks for the introduction. So me and Peter are here today, or especially I'm here today, to talk a bit about the manifest.json file. How did that come about? That was internally, we had some issues, or some colleagues came to me with some issues, and they had a hard time figuring it out. And it turned out to be some manifest.json configuration. And with that, I approached Peter basically via a GitHub issue. And long story short, now I'm here. Yeah, to just show you the issue at hand, I'm just going to share my screen and jump right in. So what do we have here? Quite simple and pretty straightforward. It's a complete new scaffolded UI5 application generated via the Easy UI5 generator from the OSS community, from the UI5 community. And in here, we have the following configuration setup with regards to the routing. So far, so good. I don't have any errors here. So I think I should be pretty fine, right? The server is running, as you can see. So it's also like there's nothing special going on. You can see there's like just two views. And all I want to do is I want to route something, right? So let's do the routing. Let's do the routing. I guess I missed something, right? Not sure, but
Marco, you made something wrong. I give you the hint.
I made something wrong. Okay. What would you say would be the issue here?
Hard to predict. So it seems everything is right, or check the log.
Seems like the file not found. Parser error. Target second view. That seems kind of odd to me. So let's check it out. Let's see if there's anything I missed. So when I have a look at here, I can see the first view that was just fine and it loaded up, right? And I can see here the configuration. So if we compare the two configurations from the view targets, you can see the first view has slight difference to the second view, right? To the targets being the identifier and the name
in front of that.
Exactly. There's some prefixes, and for some reason they're missing on the second view. So my first guess would be let's maybe change the prefixes back in to the second view. So maybe let's do the prefixing here again and see if that fixes the issue. I'm arrived on the second page. So apparently if I go back and navigate back and forth, that now works. But why is that? And how did it even come to this mistake or this error? So the issue from my colleagues was that they basically wanted to do a quick proof of concept. And to do so, as we are all developers and we like to copy paste, they did do some copy pasting of the routing configuration. So, and then this is where the error happened. One configuration was part of a application that was generated in the Business Application Studio. So technically with a slightly different generator. And the other application was generated locally with the Easy UI5 generator. And here we also found the issue. The issue itself, or if you want to say issue, is with the config itself. And the differences between legacy routing and the more modern approach, the current state of the art routing. And it all comes down to the prefixes again. And this is also the issue here that we can see. Because when I speak of legacy routing and newer routing, there's obviously some change that happened somewhere along the line, somewhere in the manifest versioning, or in the way the manifest is structured. And Peter recognized this and also thought about some possible ways of fixing this already in the future.
Yeah, first of all, in the beginning, when you open the ticket, I thought it has to do with the version information in the manifest, because we also want to consider that in future the manifest.json version used inside for the manifest, this should be in sync with the UI5 runtime version. But at the end, it turned out to be even a more interesting problem, because in the past, with as Marco already started to talk about, we had this legacy routing configuration, which always used this few prefixes there. And by introducing the component-based routing, so we had to change the names to make it more generic. And with that, we introduced these short names here. And the type of the routing is then view or component, if you would use it. And with that, the routing config, which is defined here up there, is not in sync anymore for this new routing. So it's missing already some information.
Exactly. So we have a discrepancy with the routing configuration and its targets. We could fix that by simply changing, like you saw me while I'm still screen sharing, you saw me that I switched this back to the newer one, the one without the view prefix, because it could be a view or a component now. And to make this work, I would have to add the path. Now the path, and it's basically the same as the view path in our scenario here. And then that would work again, the routing. And you also may see that now I have two things combined. I have the legacy routing and the new type of routing. This also works, but only because I still have the view path configured. So now I have two different target configurations, and they work because I have both of them covered with their specific base configuration here. And of course, if you would want, and you should have only the more modern approach happening, which means for me, I'm only going to use the path, and also I'm going to remove the prefixes in here. Oops, name. And now I go back to my little routing here. I can navigate back and forth just like I'm used to, but with a more streamlined and modern approach without the prefixes.
So for the future, this is also the thing which is intended to be that you should go for. The UI5 linter in the future will also most probably then give you hints on that direction, that this is the way you should align to. But I think the main problem exists, why this is exactly like that, is that typically if you would mix in the targets the ID and the view name, this would show you an error. So if the schema validation takes place. But in the routing configuration, we couldn't do it like either or, because we had these mixed scenarios, and therefore for compatibility reasons, we kept that open and supported both configuration variants, so that in case of using new or old routes, it can work and continue to work. But the ideal goal for the future is really to have one concrete routing configuration, a modern or legacy variant. But I would recommend always going modern.
You also mentioned or you didn't mention, but I, for example, would question what are the possible options here? What are the possible attributes in here?
Is it working for you, or should I take over quickly? Maybe I can also share it from my side.
I can show everyone real quick how one can figure out what the ID is currently validating against, and then you can take over. So let me quickly show you. This is just basic Visual Studio Code, so this should be familiar with everyone. And I have opened up the manifest.json just as we used to, and all the way on the bottom right, you have some language detection the ID is showing you, and also in the curly brackets here, you can see the schema validation that it currently applies. You can both pin it, and you can click on show schemas. And in here, in my example, there's two plugins installed right now. One, the official OSS tooling from SAP side, and a custom UI5 plugin from open source. And both of them have a specific validation going on and refer to a specific schema version. And with that schema, there comes a lot of metadata and a lot of information helpful for everyone working with the manifest. And now I would hand over to you, Peter.
So with a schema validation, as Marco showed, by default, you don't need to add something like this $schema on top, because with having plugins installed, like the language assistant for UI5 or this from Ilya, this plugin, you are able to get already a schema validation for your manifest. This is able, and maybe many of you have seen that if you enter something, you get a kind of a code completion, what is possible here below, and also some kind of description. And this description, this comes from the schema file, which is there used behind the scenes. So it validates also in case of adding wrong values, like here, that it says the property is not allowed. And while we were looking also and debugging the issue from Marco, it turned out that there was a little issue inside here, that in case of the routing configuration, we were looking for the solution, but it showed up only a few things here, which is even less than the view path and stuff like that. And we had a look together in the schema, and I also I started to sweat a little bit while we analyzed it, because I didn't know anymore how that all then plays together with updating and stuff like that. But what you can do if you have a schema locally is that, let's do it, let's put it up there, my schema, that you have also local references to that, so remote references. And in this case, Marco prepared his repository in a way that we have a local manifest schema version. So this is a copy of that version, which is was the error version we had before. And then you can use a relative URL. In this case, I'm going to .. and then the manifest schema, manifest_schema.json. So I think it's right, or Marco? Yeah, it should be. And it should switch then back and forth, and then it's reloading the schema again, and you can now check whether a change is working. And then we try to look into where does this issue come from? Why is it not displayed? Yeah, and together we had a look into the schema. So basically, I don't know who of you is familiar with the schema JSON. So it's a very mighty format where you can describe what is required for JSON objects. Yeah, you can here in this case, so the root element is required to have a version, SAP app section, and a SAP UI section. So this is how this is formulated. But in this case, this was a testing from our side yesterday. The additional properties by default is false, so it doesn't allow additional attributes, values instead. But we have for the namespaces like SAP UI5, there are also below some sections defined here. And let's go for sap.ui5. So here in this case, you see that's the namespace, and then in there it does some mapping. So with that, we drill down a little bit to the routing. And there are two routing variants. One is flex enabled and one is the non-flex enabled variant. Yeah. And in the non-flex enabled variant, we had a look what is the configuration expected. So, and here in this case, we see all of router class, async. So the properties we have seen, they were all in. And then this devs target structure. But yeah, somehow there was something missing with that. And this was the thing we had here, legacy, was it legacy routing, legacy target? Let me just show here. This is how it looks like, yeah. And these configuration options, they are just in the routing section. What is also nice for you, if you drill down there in a JSON file, you see on the breadcrumb on top, you can navigate them through this route. So you can even go up there and then search for the routing flex enable. So I find it quicker now with that way, because I know that this is the faster way. But the breadcrumbs also helps to navigate nicely in these objects. Yeah. But when doing that, we now started to see then also the properties here. You see now everything is in, and yeah, we had then also communicated this to our team who is owning the manifest schema definitions, yeah, and they fixed it immediately. So now with the latest version of that, like the raw from the coming from the master. So in the you can go there in this UI5 manifest. You have then this schema JSON available, and in the schema, you can take even the raw one. This you can put here, and with that you can also then take the latest version if your plugin is not pulling the latest version for that. And that's the way how we debug that together, and at least found out, hey, it would have been helpful to have that as a code completion. That has been now added again. And with that, at least you get also a little bit more hints on that, how you can do that together. But Marco, I think before we waste now too much time on talking about the schema and these complicated parts, you had also more questions, right? And I think it makes sense that we will go through them as well, because I think they were also pretty interesting, and I would say they should also be shared.
All right, so let's go through a few Q&As. Some may be more advanced, some may be more lower or higher level, depending on where you're coming from. And do you have any specific question you want to pick out right now, Peter? Or do you want me to just...
We should go quickly over them. I think the first part is pretty interesting because you asked me what is this CIL standing for. The CIL means component in libraries. So we not only have applications, so the standalone components more or less, we have also components in libraries, and there in the libraries the schema is a bit different. So also this schema used for the validation in that libraries are also a different one. And
you can find it right next to the default schema, so to say.
Yeah.
So then sometimes I'm confused with all the underscore versions going on.
Yeah, and only one is relevant, so I can just shorten that. Yeah,
sure.
The root one, the root one is the most important one, because this is related also to the version. You see this mapping JSON next to that on the left hand side. This describes to which version of UI5 this manifest belongs to. Yeah. Or this manifest version belongs to. And if you use this concrete manifest version, that was also the indicator for the initial issue you found, that we update also our templates to use the corresponding manifest version to also enable the code completion and the validation for this proper version, that you can see and work with that features. And the rest, which is an SAP app, we thought to have versioning per namespace, but we dropped that. So that would have been too complicated.
So the next question would be, how and where do I figure out what can I bind in my manifest? Like, there's often placeholders and things I can use binding for. And I think
the best place I got from the manifest guys, that they said, go to the documentation and search for curly brackets, because it's the handlebar syntax we used for this things. And here you see that title, subtitle, short title, info, description, or not, and text, they are bindable, the rest not. And for them, it's useful to have.
Right. Next up would be, what would be the minimum content required, or what do I even need? Because a manifest can be quite large, can be quite small, and the theoretical bare minimum.
It's very basic. You need only the version, _version, the SAP app section. Indeed, when you looked and remember what I said in the schema, also SAP UI is needed, because these three are required. So this we should update once more. I just noticed that now while...
We'll do so.
Because, and this is also one interesting part, what you see here. The validation for the manifest is just a design time thing. It's not happening at runtime. For the UI5 runtime, it doesn't matter. So even this is correct for the UI5 runtime, it works. But from the validation with the schema JSON, this is too less.
It was also one of the questions, what does the manifest like?
There is also no coupling to something. I think there was only once in the past a version. We talked quickly about that in 152 or so of UI5, where we had a coupling to a manifest version. But normally we don't do that. So typically the runtime is more or less not based on the manifest version.
All right, then. Not sure if you want to skip this. This is quite a large distinction to make.
I think everyone should still have heard that. So maybe quickly source template, because you mentioned that. The source template in the SAP app section is just metadata. It comes from tools. It describes the template originally had been used. This is mainly the generators in bars are using this information. Interesting with the async content creation, this goes a little bit more to the runtime, because you know that I think a while back we showed it also for components, that there is an interface, this async content creation. If you implement this marker interface in your component, this means you completely switch the component plus the routing of the nested views and everything else then to asynchronous. So it's the master switch of turning asynchronity on for components, yeah? And then you don't need to maintain any async anymore in the manifest for routing or for root view. This comes then by this marker interface. I just also clarified that today with the core team again, that I'm absolutely precise when I say that.
Awesome.
The rest, I think, yeah, you can also take a look here. And Marco, I think, do you open also the issues there in the repository? Maybe if there are more questions, we can use that to discuss a bit more if you have so.
Yeah. Great. Have a look in there. There's some references regarding schema validation, documentation, VS Code, everything you might want to know or have heard now will be in there.
Marco, that was really great to bring that up and that you were so open to discuss it even here in that round, because I think this is also how it should be. If there are questions out there which are really interesting for a broader community, this is a chance to come up here and to speak out and present it. Yeah, I like that way, and I hope you too.
Don't be afraid to ask.
I want to talk today about some of the latest accessibility enhancements that we've been working on in the past year. So in general, we work very closely with our stakeholders, with our customers, with our design teams, and also with the accessibility team in order to improve our implementation for accessibility in UI5 and in web components. And this is really an ongoing process. Now I will share some of the bigger topics, but there are also many things that happened also during the last year. So let's start with one of the biggest highlights, which is the WCAG 2.2 Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.2. They were released in the end of 2023, and we were already looking into them. But last year we started to to adopt the newest things that were coming. So in short, if you go on the WCAG page here and check the new features, you can see what are the new success criteria. So the first three are related with focus. Basically, that the focus doesn't have to be hidden within the application. And then the third one is about how the focus should look like, that it has to be 2 pixels thick and that it has to have a good contrast. So for the first two requirements, the good thing for us was that we were already, so to say, living those requirements, and we already have looked into the fact that the focus is not hidden. For example, when you navigate somewhere on the screen and the focus might go out of the viewport, then we try to scroll it and we do some other specific things in order to be to keep the focus on the screen. We really didn't have so much things to do here. Then for the focus appearance, the good thing was that Horizon as theme was designed having in mind WCAG 2.2. So from start, the design of the focus was designed in the way so that we are compliant with this requirement and have basically the needed area and to have the needed contrast. So our task again here was to check that this is consistently implemented and works okay across the controls. Then the next two requirements were the one that were more tricky and took us more time in order to work on them. So I will start with dragging movements. Here, basically, the requirement is saying that when you have a drag and drop operation, you need to be able to achieve the same operation with single pointer, with single action without dragging. So to give you an example, here in the icon tab bar, we have drag and drop. And I can drag this here. The requirement says I need to be able to do this with single clicks or single operation. So the first, one of the first things that we found out was that there is already a feature on operating system level. It's available on the different platforms. I will show it now on Windows. So if you go in the settings of the mouse, there is such a thing called click walk. So when I enable it, now I can do a wonk press here. And now I'm not holding the mouse, but when I drag, when I move the mouse, basically the browser keeps, the operating system keeps this item pressed. So I can just release it here. And this was already a good thing. So we checked across the controls and across the web components that this works reliably, and already was a good thing in supporting this. But then we also went overboard, and in some specific components, we said we need to provide additional UX changes on top so that we can have the needed usability for our users. So I will show here one demo for this interactive row mode in the table. So with drag and drop, basically, I can show or hide more rows. But what we introduced is this menu. On right click, I can say, okay, I want to see one more row, or I can see all the rows, and so on. Another example, again, in the direction of single pointer operation is for the sliders. So we had already this implemented in UI5s, and we had to do it now for web components. So for example, for the sliders, I can do again a change in the value by drag and drop. And in order to have a manual and precise operation, we allowed those editable tooltips so that the user can enter the value and change it. So their drag and drop is not needed. Another example that I want to share is here in the grid table. So here with drag and drop, I can reorder the columns. And then here is a place where we need the support from the application. We have this view settings dialog where here with single clicks, you can reorder the columns. And this is working nice, and you can use it. But then it is up to the application really to enable this dialog so that it works in combination with the table. So as a summary, for some of the things, we have done them on framework level. For some of the things, there needs to be a specific adaptation on application side. And all of this is documented in the documentation and also in the Fiori guidelines. So let's move forward. Now, the next requirement is about the target size. So the background here is you need to have enough size of the targets that you interact on a website. So the standard defines at least 24 by 24 CSS pixels. So the idea, basically the background, is that when a user is using a specific website, they don't have to activate accidentally another element. So for example, if they want here to use this splitter, basically, there should be a 24 pixel size. So for example, here, you can see that the splitter visually is smaller, but we have a specific element here where the target size is enough. And if I go here with the mouse on the left side, you can see that I'm not on the splitter, but I can start dragging from here. And if I go to the left, of course, the scroll bar works. So we had a lot of changes in the different controls in order to increase such small elements and ensure that they are at least 24 pixels, or if they are not 24 pixels, then basically we have to ensure that there is no another interactive element near them. And again, as you can imagine here, we also need your part as application developer. So here in the accessibility guide tutorial, we have one section, target size. Now, this is the latest version. Previously, it was called spacing. And here we give a lot of details on how to achieve this specifically for the links, because the links are controls that have less than 24 pixels, and depending on the usage, you might end up in situation where you need to either put some spacing or even use this reactive area mode property to have more spacing around the link. I will quickly show the example. So here, the reason we need to have this is because the link is in an interactive list. So basically, the user should be able to click on the link, and we need to have an increased line height of the link. And this is done with this reactive area mode. So here again, please check the Fiori guidelines and the accessibility guide in order to see what you can do better in order to support WCAG. Then moving forward, those requirements are more with focus on application development, to have a consistent position of your help, for example, up in the toolbar somewhere or below in the footer of your application. Then you need to avoid redundant entry. You don't need to ask the user to enter the same data twice. And you need to have accessible authentication. But this is something that you have to ensure on application level. So that's it for WCAG. Now I will move forward to the next bigger topic from last year, and not only last year, it's ARIA 1.2. So WCAG, as you saw, is more, so Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, they are more focused on the usage of the element, the sizing, and so on. ARIA is basically the technical standard that we implement in order to provide support for assistive technologies, and specifically screen reader. So it defines how the different ARIA attributes should be used on top of HTML where applicable, so that you can make your application accessible. And of course, we use this across the framework and across the web components in order to have good screen reader support. So the last ARIA standard, I think, was released 2017, so 6 years of innovation came to us. Here on the left side, when you open the ARIA standard, you can see this chapter substantive changes since ARIA 1.1. I will not go into all the details because there are really a lot. What I would like to emphasize is that we had two main things here. On one side, we had a lot of changes, and basically we had to ensure that our code is in sync with these changes and we are compliant with the standard. So, for example, you can see that those attributes here, ARIA disabled, ARIA error message, they were changed from global to widget specific, which means that previously they were allowed to be used on all the ARIA rows, and now they are allowed only on a subset. So we had really to check each and every usage of this attribute and see if this is allowed. Or in some other cases, for example, here it was restricted to use row group inside a list. So for this change, I have a small demo, and I can show you how our implementation was before adopting the new standard. Here I have a sub-M list with grouping, basically. And previously, if you look into the code, so here you can see we have the list, and inside it we have sorry, 1 second. And inside it, we have the row group, and this row group owns all the elements in this group. So alpha printers owns all the elements. And now, according to ARIA 1.2, this is forbidden. So we needed to find what is the new appropriate way in order to do so. And now this is the latest released version. Here you can see that we have a list, then we have a list item because group is not allowed anymore. And if you expand this list item, you can find another list that owns the list items that needs to be in this group. So basically we have a list with lists inside, grouping the different elements. And if you look into the overall structure, we were able, by this change, to still keep the linear structure. So if you go from top to bottom, you see all the list items like this, and then you have the grouping element inside. So this is just one example of adopting and adjusting to ARIA 1.2. The other big portions of ARIA 1.2 were new features and new attributes where we had really to see what new is coming out from the standard and what we can use in order to improve our accessibility. Then somebody might ask, but at the end, I don't see any difference between those two examples. Yeah, that's true. Visually, there is no difference, but there is a difference then for the tools who are parsing these ARIA attributes. And with this, I want to switch to the last topic, which is our reference test environment. So if you are more familiar with the topic, if you have looked into our documentation, you will be able to, you already have seen most probably this statement that we as a framework, and this is valid also for web components, we state that we are supporting the international standards. So ARIA and HTML and WCAG, of course. And then basically we expect all the software that is reading those attributes to work in an appropriate way. Still, we have a reference test environment that we use for testing. So we have a regular testing. Basically, once in a year, we are checking all the controls with screen reader in order to ensure that the implementation is working fine. And last year, here you can see with 1.124, we switched to JAWS 2024. But again, this is a test environment. We are not stating that we support JAWS, we support the standards. And again, why it's important then to keep up to date with the standards. So the tools like JAWS or VoiceOver or other screen readers, they are also evolving and they are also consuming the latest standards. So basically, we need to test with newer and newer versions, because when we innovate, then the tools are also innovating, and that's how basically the whole connection works. Yeah. And I want to share also one other page. So here in the, if you look for accessibility in demo kit, and you can check for accessibility support history here, you can see one table where we are keeping the information about the changes of our standards. So with WCAG 2.2 and ARIA 1.2, we still have some final changes to complete. That's why you still don't see them in the list, but we expect to finish this work in the upcoming months, and you will see this also mentioned. Yeah. And this is a good place that you can check what is happening, what standards we are following, and so on.
Hey, thanks a lot, Nikolai, for this big run through all the accessibility news. It's impressive to see what's going on behind the scenes to make everything usable for all the users and what has to be done there. Again, thanks to everyone. Also, thanks to the participants, to the attendees for your interest, for watching. You're finishing in time. Thank you very much. See you.
Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.
Have a nice day.
And thanks, Marco. Thanks, Niki.